rest of the world has realized it. So that's why, our own director, Mr. Kunishi, in a speech he made earlier this year, said, the Philippines is no longer the sick man of East Asia, it's the rising tiger. And we in the World Bank believe that.
The investment-grade credit rating and the positive assessments from international institutions are well earned. These are the results of policy reforms deliberately implemented over the years in collaboration with the private sector to improve governance and harness the Philippine economy's growth potentials.
Truly, these reforms have enabled the country to sustain robust growth, post solid macroeconomic fundamentals, and make significant progress on various fronts.
Our economic growth has accelerated, with potential output now higher than the 4.85% average growth rate in the past 12 years. Growth has also become more broad-based. Inflation has been low and stable, and has been within the target range in the last 4 years. Our external payments position remains a key strength of the Philippine economy, with international reserves now exceeding our external liabilities. In fact, we have become a creditor to the IMF as we help in global financial stability efforts. Our banking system is sound and stable, making our banks effective intermediary of funds to service the credit needs of our people. The government's fiscal strength continues to improve, creating more fiscal space for productive investments.
But this kind of economic growth is happening when the Philippines has just been upgraded to investment grade, means that development can take place at an even faster rate, opening more and better opportunities for business and investors.
Both trade and investment side, we have seen significant growth coming from 2011 to 2012, and we expect the same thing for 2013. In particular, for investments, we've seen the growth in the registrations of investments with our investment promotion agencies increased by over 40% year-on-year, 2013 over 2012. We've seen a significant diversification of our exports. Electronics exports used to account for 70% of all merchandise exports. Today, it's around 40%. This means that we are now exporting many other products outside of the electronics products, including prefabricated housing, bicycle parts, medical devices, and so forth. Most of these products have higher value added.
There are many other reasons why the Philippines should attract more investments. One of them is its globally in-demand labor force.
One of the reasons were the Filipino values and the workforce that we looked at, as well as the economic pay zone. We also looked at their education level, and 57% of our employees are engineering degreed here. And another is 18% is in arts and sciences and other disciplines. The bonus of it is that the workforce that we brought in has a lot of training in lean methodologies, which is very important to us.
We decided the Philippines, but before that, we researched Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, or other countries. But however, the Philippines was the best place to be investment for our shipbuilding business. In the Philippines, there are many skilled workers, educated and motivated. Secondly, accessibility. The Philippines is the center of Southeast Asian countries. The last week, the well-known partner and also the friendly local government unit, which is Balambang Municipality, Philippines, I learned that no shipbuilding history have given a real presence to the face made in Philippines. The quality of Balambang-made ships is the same as those made in Japan.
The establishment date of this company is March 2012. The only 3 or 4 months we can establish our company. Very easy and very convenient for us. So in other country, we cannot establish our company within 3 months. The attitude of Philippines is very cheerful. Every day that I come to work, it's very happy. Filipino, they get the good education. They have some of the knowledge of engineering. That one is another reason.
The Philippines has other competitive advantages and offers many opportunities for investors to do business profitably in the country.
The Philippines is about to hit its demographic sweet spot, and countries that have gone through that have seen acceleration in their GDP growth rates. As the per capita and disposable income increases, there will be a lot of opportunities for investors, not only to sell goods to Filipinos, but to invest in infrastructure. Secondly, the governance has improved dramatically since President Aquino took over, and I believe this is going to be irreversible because people now are more empowered with internet. Third, 2015 is just a few years away, and the Philippines will be part of an integrated ASEAN economy that would be one of the largest in the world with an average age of 27. And finally, we are right in the middle of what will be the most dynamic economic region of the world for the next 30 to 50 years. So it's the best time to come into a country like the Philippines where the upside potential is quite substantial and the downside risks are quite limited.
As the Philippines continues to outshine and reap accolades and seals of approval, the government strives harder to achieve inclusive growth and maximize opportunities for all.
People often ask us, what are the three things we have to do to produce inclusive growth? It really needs to be a comprehensive reform agenda across a whole range of sectors. I think it's more important that the country uses this moment, this confidence, this very committed government to sort of create a coalition around all the reforms needed to get inclusive growth going.
The BSP contributes to the government's goal of promoting inclusive growth through our advocacies on financial inclusion. First, by creating the regulatory environment to ensure greater access to credit and financial products for MSMEs, especially those underserved and unbanked sectors of the economy. Second, by reaching out to the public, including Filipinos overseas and the youth, through our financial education campaigns to encourage them to save more and invest more. Lastly, by providing a mechanism for redress of complaints related to consumer financial products. Through these initiatives, the BSP endeavors to ensure that the benefits of our sound macroeconomy translate to improvements in the microeconomy also. That is, as the Philippines moves along a higher growth path, no one is left behind.
Agriculture is one of the two sectors capable of creating jobs, complementing existing livelihoods and igniting rural development. Current reforms and policy transformations have created income-generating opportunities for more Filipinos. We continue to promote agribusiness investments by assisting in the development of various agribusiness enterprise in coordination with the regional marketing people, local government units, and the private sector to improve local employment and income opportunities and strengthen even more the partnership between the public and private sector. Under the Philippine Rural Development Program that was approved by the NEDA board last June 2013, investment in agricultural infrastructure and support for priority commodities determined together with public and private province-level stakeholders shall receive priority.
The investment grade is certainly a very good housekeeping seal for the Philippines, and therefore will be able to translate into making the Philippines a welcome destination for foreign direct investments. It will also translate into lesser borrowing costs and therefore less interest payments for the country. And all this mean that the country will be experiencing a greater fiscal space that can be devoted to more social services as well as livelihood and income-generating programs, especially in the areas of infrastructure, agriculture, tourism, and of course the revival of the manufacturing sector.
The SME sector is very critical to the attainment of inclusive growth because SMEs account for over 99% of the business enterprises in the Philippines. A lot of our efforts are now really devoted to the support of SMEs. In particular, we have the shared services facilities, which will provide common facility to small groups of entrepreneurs, because this will improve their production volumes as well as improve their quality. We also have many other programs that we offer, such as the SME Roving Academy, which will provide training programs in the basics of business, including tips on how to export, tips on how to design your products. We also are working on crafting a law and to ease the regulations and registration processes of doing business.
We're also doing PPP in terms of reforming the supply chain in the country. A lot of our poor are in the agriculture sector. We are reaching out to the large multinationals in this country so that they can use their purchasing budget to buy more from our agricultural sector. A very good example would be Nestle that's buying more of its coffee requirements in the country now. Jollibee has been helping onion farmers in the Philippines supply its onion requirements. I understand now they buy the bulk of their onion requirements from small farmers. It's important that the private sector realizes that it also has an important role in this quest for inclusive growth.
Indeed, the country's journey doesn't end with attaining investment grade.
We have to make sure that we institutionalize the reforms that President Aquino has started. Reforms in public financial management, in the BIR, and in the other important financial agencies of government. Reforms in terms of how we evaluate and reward government employees. It's important that we institutionalize meritocracy in this country. Reforms in terms of legislation, making sure that changes in policies are enshrined in laws. So the key is institutionalization. When people are able to clearly distinguish the impact to their own lives of good governance, then I think they'll demand more of the same after 2016.
Sustained, inclusive growth that benefits the public and investors alike can only be achieved through longevity. The longevity of reform and good governance that has built trust, confidence, and optimism in the Philippines.
Today, all the factors are in place. Political stability, low inflation, and low borrowing rates. Opportunities for growth in almost all sectors. A government committed to integrity and empowerment, and a people known the world over for their industry, loyalty, and creativity. In our country, we have the recipe for sustained inclusive growth that benefits investors and the public alike. All that is left is for us to engage each other and work together. This is the perfect time to invest in the Philippines.
Investment Grade Philippines, seizing opportunities to achieve inclusive growth.
Okay. Let's begin our panel discussion on foreign direct investments. Sitting here for our panel will be National Competitiveness Council Co-Chair Guillermo Luz. Bill, please. Trade Secretary Gregory Domingo. Greg, if you may. Accenture Country Managing Director Manolito Tayag. Lito. BIR Commissioner Kim Henares. Kim, please. Be nice, Kim. SEC Chairperson Tess Herbosa. Also, just for your information, our panelists have a lifeline if there are questions that may be difficult to answer. I'd like to recognize the presence of the following here in the front row who can help out if there are some questions. Finance Secretary Cesar Purisima, Governor Titanco, who you've already seen, Budget Secretary Butch Abad, Public Works Secretary Rogelio Singson, Energy Secretary Carlos Jericho Petilla, Tourism Secretary Ramon Jimenez, Transportation Secretary Joseph Emilio Abaya, PMS Secretary Julia Abad, who's also here. Hello, Julia. And Undersecretary for Agriculture Segfredo Serrano. So they will be on hand also to answer questions and help out our panelists. Let's begin with a short statement from Trade Secretary Greg Domingo. Greg, we've seen the setup. As the President said, the conditions are in place. Perhaps you can talk to us briefly about what the investment numbers are on the ground.
Okay, good morning to everyone. Well, the good news is that the investment numbers are up across many fronts, including the much criticized FDI numbers. For the first half of 2013, we have FDI at $2.2 billion, which is compared to the $2.8 billion of the entire 2012, which was a big improvement from the $1.2 billion in 2010, $1.8 billion in 2011. So we're seeing this increasing and continuous trend of increasing FDI numbers. That is supported as well by the registration of investments in the investment promotion agencies, which was at 500, between BOI and PEZA was at $506 billion in 2000 pesos in 2010, 657 in 2011, 672 in 2012, and so far in 2013 we have 398, which is a 26% increase from 2012 levels. This is supported as well by what you see in terms of the construction that's going on, in terms of the BPO call center spaces, as well as a lot of big construction going on in the industrial parks. And you're also seeing a lot of expansion of industrial parks themselves as they are running out of space. So all in all, the investment picture looks very promising. Do you want me to discuss as well the recent surveys on competitiveness, or?
Yeah, sure, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, just to give you some more meat, many organizations, of course, globally have recognized the Philippines in terms of the improvement in our business environment. Of course, we start them with the credit rating agencies that have upgraded us to investment grade, Fitch, S&P, and the Japan Credit Rating Agency, and hopefully Moody's soon to follow. And World Economic Forum, we were ranked 85th place in 2010, improved to 75th in 2011, to 65th in 2012, and in the recently released survey, we were ranked 59th. That's a 26-point improvement from 2010, which is probably the biggest in the entire WEF survey over the past 3 years. And today, in the newspapers today, if you read it, Grant Thornton showed a massive improvement in the Philippines rating from 46th place out of 60 to 21st place. That's more than a 50% improvement. And the biggest improvement in the various categories, the biggest one was in labor and capital, where Philippines improved from 45th to 5th place. And you have many more. The Heritage Foundation, the IMD survey were basically flat, but the Heritage Foundation as well showed a big improvement. And in the ASEAN Business Outlook survey as well, the profit expectations of businesses in the Philippines showed that 84% of businesses expect a profit increase in 2014. That's an improvement from 64% expectation last year, 2012, of 2013 profit. They expected 64% increase. Now it's 84% for next year. And then expat satisfaction survey, and I'm sure many of the expats here will probably confirm this. Very high for the Philippines, 92% expat satisfaction, with 82% trying to extend their stay here in the Philippines, so that's very good news. Inbound missions as well. We count the number of inbound missions that come here, the number of companies that come here. In 2010, this was only 276 companies. In 2011, this rose to 1,373 companies. In 2012, it was 1,765 companies. And so far, in the first half of this year, we had 850 companies visiting. So we're seeing this massive interest in the Philippines from an investment perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. My first question would be something like this. We've got a great macroeconomic picture. The numbers are looking good, and the surveys you've cited, it's all looking like it's prime. But what kind of investments, or what kind of efforts are we doing to sustain the kind of growth we're seeing in investments? You said 2.2 billion for the first half compared to 2.8 billion for the entire 2012. What are we doing to make sure that those numbers continue to grow?
Well, there's some within our control, which is basically the business environment here. And a lot of that is credited, of course, to the President Aquino and his good governance agenda, which has really captured the imagination of the entire world. So everybody wants a piece of the Philippines. Not only in the investment side, you're also looking at the tourism. Almost once every 2 weeks, somebody's telling me that they want to host their global or regional conference here in 2014, 2015. So Philippines is quite in right now because of all this attention we're getting. And the entire team of President Aquino is really trying to improve the business environment, from the processes of, let's say, government purchases, making it transparent and more level playing field. Same thing with business registration processes that we're trying to cut down and improve so we can shorten the time. We have many efforts there. But a big part of it also are our situation relative to our neighbors here in Asia and ASEAN, wherein our labor costs have been quite steady, growing at about 3 to 5% every year. So that stability in terms of our labor as well as the labor cost is a very big factor. When we entered, let's say 5 years ago, we were significantly more expensive than China, for example, in terms of labor cost. We were significantly more expensive than Thailand. We were significantly more expensive than Indonesia. And this has kind of changed over the last 5 years. Where in China now, because of the rapid increase in wages over the last 5 years, China is now significantly more expensive than the Philippines, especially the southern coast of China. We're about at par with the cost of Thailand. We're now only slightly more expensive than the cost in Indonesia. And then you have other countries that are experiencing inflation problems. While Philippines is at a very low 2.8%, 3% inflation rate, with a high growth, a very young population, very big demand, there are so many factors right now, positive factors, working for the Philippines, both controllable and also outside of our control because of what our neighbors are doing. But because we have a very stable climate and a very good president who's very well respected, the interest now really is on the Philippines. So we're in a sweet spot.
Do we have any, I don't know, in light of all the things that have been going on and what you've said, do we have targets for, let's say, 14, what kind of FDI we're looking at, and perhaps 15. By the way, this is not limited to Greg. If there's anyone on the panel who wants to chime in, please do so. And the cabinet members who I cited, you can also come in. But what kind of targets are we looking at for maybe 14 and 15? If you can, Greg, since the others are leaving you.
Okay. Well, obviously, one thing to note though, okay, because FDI is such a hot issue. I was looking closely at the FDI numbers, at least in ASEAN as reported, and I noticed that we are reporting net FDI numbers. That means gross FDI and then net of outflows. So in inflows, less outflows. But I noticed that in some of the reporting that was done, some of them are reporting gross numbers. So I just want some people to, pay attention to that, because maybe some of those numbers are not apples to apples. But we are reporting on the conservative basis, which is the net, which is the right way to report it. Our expectation is really for a significant but steady increase of, let's say, 15 to 20% per year. That really should be our target in terms of increasing our investments. And also the big difference now in the Philippines is because of the liquidity of the local banking system, as well as the capability, the much stronger capability of the domestic corporations. A lot of the investments actually are being undertaken by the local business groups now. So whereas before, if we had big infrastructure projects, we would be reliant primarily on foreign companies to undertake them for us. Now, there are a number of companies in the Philippines that are capable of undertaking these big infrastructure projects by themselves. In most cases, in many cases, they still look for a foreign partner, but now they take a majority of the project instead of taking a small minority.
Okay, that should generate some questions. If you do have questions, by the way, a little bit later on, just feel free to go up to the mic and I will recognize you and you can ask your question. But let's talk to Lito Tayag first, who's the Country Managing Director for Accenture. Lito, in general terms, I don't want to talk about specifically your company because you're in a quiet period. But in general terms, as an investor, what are you looking at? And what would be a compelling reason to invest in the Philippines, given everything that Greg has talked about?
Sure, thank you. Well, just a quick background for those who are not familiar. Accenture today has about 30,000 people in the Philippines, and we are providing the whole portfolio of services of Accenture, which includes management consulting, information technology, and business process management. And this is in the context of the growing IT BPM industry in the Philippines, where in 2012 we generated $13 billion in revenue, employing more than 700 people directly. And this growth, actually, to your question, is because of the availability of the right talent in the country. We talked about, Secretary Greg talked about business environment as well as cost competitiveness, but this industry in particular, aside from those, is particularly concerned and actually focused on the talent that we have today. And so far, the growth of this industry has been on the back of the availability of this talent. As we move forward, we continue. Accenture itself has put the Philippines as part of its strategic direction, and so I think the rest of the BPO, IT BPO industry, and our aspiration to significantly grow in the next few years, and this is going to be at the back of the availability of the talent. And I think our challenge then is to continue to provide this talent to support the growth, the ambitious growth, I would say, of the IT BPO industry. And so far, we have been fortunate, actually, we've been happy with the kind of collaboration that we've been getting as a partnership, actually as a tripartite partnership between the government, the industry, and the academe to actually move both short-term and long-term to provide this talent that is needed by our industry to continue to grow.
Okay, I mean, it's pretty clear that we're competitive in your industry, Lito, but talk to me, Bill, also about some of the broader issues. No? I mean, we're rising in our competitive numbers, but how do we compare still with other countries around the region?
Well, if I track the last 3 years of we track 10 major global reports. 6 have reported out this year, and we're up on all 6. I think that's the first thing to remember. So it's quite consistent. It's not a matter of luck for one and we flunked the others. So we're up on all 6 this year. And if I take a look at the last 3 years, on all 6, we're net up on all 6. No? And on the big ones, World Economic Forum, Transparency International, and Economic Freedom Index, we're up 26, 24, and 18. So that puts us at the head of the pack in terms of improvements, not on ASEAN-wide basis, but on a global basis. Now, to understand how the global reports work, you don't jump 26 by only acing a few indicators and then blowing it on the rest. There are 12 major indicators, and typically for the last 2 years where we have been jumping in double-digit ranges, we have been improving on anywhere from 9 to 11 of the 12 categories. So those categories are major: governance, macroeconomic performance, education, financial markets, labor markets. Innovation also has been, we've seen big jumps. So we've made gains. Now we started from a low base, but now we've moved into the middle of the pack within ASEAN. Our goal is to move from the bottom third of the world to the top third of the world. So when we take a look at the most important, one of the most important reports we look at is World Economic Forum. Once upon a time, we were in the bottom 20% of the world. Today, we are in at least within the top 40% of the world. So we're well on our way to meet target in the next year or two. And as I said, it's across the board, the improvements. Fastest moving in ASEAN, and we're closing the gap to some of our ASEAN neighbors.
But what else do we need to do to get higher up?
Well, we need consistency. We cannot be performing good one year and bad the next year. So I'm happy to see we've had that consistency over 3 years. We need across the board performance. So we need to maintain improvements across 9 to 11 or all 12 indicators, as there are typically 12 indicators in most of these reports. We need to come up in certain areas like infrastructure, primary health, primary education, what we call the basics. No? And we need to make more investment. This is important. The weights will shift, the emphasis will shift to sustainability, environment, and technology. So we need to make those investments in those 3 areas today if we want to reap the benefit 3 to 5 to 10 years from now. If we stick to the basics, we will improve. But if we underinvest in sustainability, environment, and technology, then we will fail. We've made the investment in education, but without extra leverage from technology, which powers other industries, all industries actually, then we will begin to fall back. So those are the 3 things I would say we concentrate on over the next 3 years.
And are you seeing movement in that direction?
Definitely. I mean, if we take a look at innovation, we are up plus 25 on innovation in the last year in World Economic Forum. I'm waiting to see what happens in the Global Tech Report, also from World Economic Forum out late in the year. But I think the big improvement is that government procurement of advanced technology products has made a big jump. It's plus 22, and I think what we're seeing is that the reorganization of the government in terms of procurement of IT by centralizing standards for interoperability and connectivity through DBM and the ICT office is going to reap benefits. So you'll see that in the 2014, 15, and 16 budget as we centralize, and it amounts to smarter spending on the part of the government in IT infrastructure.
We've seen investments, and we've really made a definite effort to promote investments in tourism and infrastructure. I remember R.C. Balisacan, who, by the way, is not here because he has a budget hearing, but I remember him saying that last year we were seeing a pickup in investments in manufacturing. Is this something that we can sustain? What areas of manufacturing? Is it a fluke, or is it something that we can keep growing Greg or anybody from the cabinet, do you want to answer that?
Yes. In the first half of this year, manufacturing grew by 9.9%, and that surpassing the growth actually of services of 7.1%. And this is not a fluke. It is going to be sustainable. There are many plants being built right now. I mean, Director General De Lima Lopez is here, and we have a lot of manufacturing plants being constructed right now. So as these plants open, that will continue to boost our manufacturing numbers. And these plants are not small plants, they're mega plants. You're talking about 5 hectare, 10 hectare, 20 hectare properties being converted to manufacturing plants by one company, per company. So yes, the strength in manufacturing will be sustained. And we are seeing more visits now. I said on the inbound missions, most of them are manufacturing.
Greg, and maybe Lilia De Lima can talk to this as well. What areas in manufacturing are we seeing the most interest? I mean, manufacturing can be very broad. Is it concentrated in a specific sub-area, or is it broad-based?
Well, let me give you some examples. Our plants in terms of our exports used to be 70% electronics. Today, it's only 40%. Because in particular, in the last 3 years, a lot of plants that are non-electronics have been built in the Philippines. You're also seeing a lot of expansion in the consumer goods category. A lot of investments going on there, whether it be the Nestle's of this world, the Coca-Colas, etc., Procter & Gamble, Unilever. But you're also seeing the likes of Fujifilm, which has opened. They're producing the high-performance lenses of Fuji. That's plant. You're seeing Canon printers, Brother printers. You're seeing medical devices being exported out of the Philippines now. You're seeing the toy companies, international toy companies, starting to produce here. You're seeing also garments companies, in particular the very high-end brands, like everybody knows already that Coach leather goods are being produced in the Philippines in a very big way with thousands of employees and so forth. So the manufacturing base is becoming much, much broader than electronics, and that's the good news.
Okay. As I'm sure many of our friends here in the audience will tell you, the numbers are certainly looking good and the investments are coming in, but there are still some concerns. If you look at the ease of doing business report for 2013, there are still areas where we could see a lot of improvement. Let me just cite some of them, and I'm sure some of you will agree with this. Some people have cited concerns starting a business, dealing with construction permits, registering property, paying taxes, Kim, getting credit, protecting investors, enforcing contracts, resolving insolvency. Can we talk a little bit, Tess and Kim, about what we're doing to help make things easier?
Yes, good morning, everyone. In terms of starting a business, SEC, of course, with Secretary Domingo leading the way and Bill Luz behind our backs, we've been trying to streamline the registration process, and just as proof that we've probably been quite successful, we set up the Green Lane Processing Unit for one-day registration in 2011, and we started maybe about 10% only of total registration going through that processing unit, but now it's 60%. So 60% of applicants for registration of corporations and partnerships go through the Green Lane Processing Unit, which means only one-day registration. Of course, we also have done away with some documentary requirements because, as you can see, based on the four corners of a document submitted to us, we will not be able to find out or determine at that point whether the corporation is going to do something fraudulent. So we might as well do away with that and just intensify compliance monitoring after registration. So we've done away with the certificate of bank deposit, and a lot of investors, or even I think IFC has taken out one day for that certificate of bank deposit, and we have quite gone up in the ranking. And also, we're going to go for online registration. The process for the procurement of a comprehensive registration system is now with the DBM, Procurement Board, and we hope to have that in place. That would also enhance our present IVU facility, which is our commitment to transparency. Anybody here, I think, who has gone through our website and gone to our iView facility, you can view the submissions of all corporations in the Philippines. So you can look at their financial statements, you can look at their current general information sheets. So that, I think, would attract foreign investors in the Philippines. But of course, our main objective is really to go up on the other items like protection of minority stockholders, so protecting their investments here in the Philippines. We can probably do that also by amending the corporation code, because a lot of the provisions there didn't envision all the situations on conflict of interest, related party transactions. So we'll do some proposals in amending the corporation code. Together with that, we'd also want to extend or probably give perpetual life to corporations, provide for one-person corporations instead of always requiring a minimum of 5 incorporators, and a lot of other changes. I think it came out in the papers yesterday, are proposals to amend the corporation code. We're also very active in the ASEAN initiatives that's in preparation for the ASEAN Economic Community of 2015. We are right now harmonizing the rules on registration of securities, clearing, depository, settlement rules, dispute resolution with all our ASEAN counterparts. And last but not least, we've also done a small way in making it easier for foreign investors in the sense of reviewing our rules on securities deposit for branches of foreign corporations, and also for not penalizing them too much if they forget to register under the Foreign Investment Act. And we've also tried to do away with the requirement of authentication by our Philippine consuls abroad. So we've written the Department of Foreign Affairs saying that if you could be one of the competent authorities under the Apostille Convention, then we can probably do away with requiring authentication and consular registration of certain documents which foreign investors usually submit to us.
Is that going to happen anytime soon? Do we have a timetable for that?
For our amendments to the corporation
Well,
code?
the things that you're talking about.
Well, some of them are already on stream and already adopted by us. So it's really just the proposal or the legislative agenda that we want to fast track, and then we're still trying to improve all our other, especially with respect to our computerization. Because like, for example, how do you prevent people from incorporating too many times and not for good intentions? We feel that we could have data capture, like the minute they register, we could trace if the names are the same, the addresses are the same, the notary public's the same, so probably there's something wrong there.
What about the amendments to the corporation code? Where are we at there?
We've submitted to the Secretary of Finance to include it perhaps in the legislative agenda of the department. And already, because of the news that came out about it, a lot of legislators have called up and said that they want to sponsor the amendment of the corporation.
So there's a draft already?
Yes.
With Mr. Purisima?
Last Friday.
Okay. Kim, I see you grabbing the mic. Do you have something to add to that, Kim?
Yeah, with regard to starting the business, we actually had already re-engineered the process for registering a business, and we're building the IT capability to be able to implement this. Going forward, once we complete all of this, people would just have to register or apply for registration online in their office or in their houses, no? And delivery of the registration certificate will be done by the Bureau of Internal Revenue. This way, they don't have to come to our office. It's more convenient for them, and in another sense, it provides us with an assurance that those people who register really exist, because we will be the one delivering. If you're not there, then you must not be a legitimate business person. Then the other thing about registering properties, we are also building the capability. We have also re-engineered the process, and we're building the IT capability for when you file your capital gains tax, donors tax, estate tax, you will do it online. And we will issue the certificate authorizing registration electronically, and this will be submitted directly to the Registry of Deeds. And actually, we already have a memorandum of agreement with the Land Registration Authority to be able to implement this. No? So we're building all those capability. And we're also, I think there's a indicator there that was dropped, no? But this is one of the major problem of businessman. This is closing the business. We're also going to reform that process to make the periods shorter, because now it seems like there are complaints that even after 2-3 years, their business is still not yet closed, no, because they're waiting for clearances. So we hope to re-engineer this process and make that period short to a maximum of 6 months. And I think we're also in discussion with DBM about using an online payment system, because we're also building, aside from the electronic filing and payment system, we have already built the interactive form. Basically, this will allow ordinary, not large corporation, those that are self-employed professional to be able to file their various returns electronically online if they so chooses, so they don't have to go to the bank. No? Then with an option to pay electronically or go to the bank, because there are people who are not comfortable with paying online. No? So there's going to be a choice. So that's what we're building, and by April 15, everyone will have a choice to be able to file electronically or fall in line and file and be part of the fiesta. Every April 15, there's a fiesta in the Bureau of Internal Revenue, no, where everyone like to be part of the crowd. So they will have a choice this April 15. So those are the things that we're working on. And I think the other thing that we want to work on is to start a discussion with the Supreme Court about going through electronic notarization. Because until and unless that portion is built, there will not be a truly end-to-end seamless online transaction. Because most government document, you have to have it notarized. No? So that's one other aspect that we have to work on, and that one we have to work with other branches of government.
But the electronic filing, you're saying that can be in place by the next tax season? April 15 of next year?
For the April 15, for the income tax return for 2012, it will be in place for April 15. Actually, now we're already piloting the other returns, no? The VAT return, the percentage tax return. It's already online, it's on pilot, and we will be rolling it out soon, no? Before the end of the year.
Just out of curiosity, are you getting any resistance from any sectors?
There's always resistance when you try to ask them to pay the right taxes. I'm a nice person, especially to the person who pay the right tax. It's only to those persons who don't pay the right tax that I'm nice, not nice.
Bill, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that the IFC World Bank doing business report measures 10 processes that are what we call the life cycle of a business, from starting the business to closing the business and everything in between. We work together with agencies like BIR, SEC, DTI, and all the others. We've created 10 small teams, one for each process. And the task essentially is to re-engineer the process by simplifying it and cutting out the steps that can be cut out, and then automating the steps. No? This requires a lot of cooperation within among many agencies. So if you're asking about resistance, no, we have not come across resistance in the agencies. Everybody realizes we need to improve because we rank quite low in the world in any of the 10 indicators, all 10 in fact. So our total global ranking is 138 over 185. So, we really made a decision, all of us, that we needed to fix this. The next report comes out October 29th. The global ranking will be released. I'm confident that we're going to get an upgrade. The teams have done a lot of work. We've done video conferences to communicate clearly to IFC exactly what the government has done. We've had to fight it out with them and argue our case that we have made the improvements, but I'm confident we will get the upgrade because we have seen firsthand. Now, I want to just stress that all the improvements have to be in by June 1st of every year, not the end of the year. June 1st is a cutoff date, so we're always chasing a June 1 deadline to make sure the reforms are in place and in force, not just on paper, but actually operating for it to be counted in any upgrade. So we've done the work to meet the deadline this year. We're confident we're going to get the upgrade in October 29th from IFC World Bank.
Okay, we've got, yes, Lilia.
Yes. Two things. First, on the surveys, I still have I'm not very happy with the surveys because the wordings all say, from your perception. It's not from your experience. So I don't like, it's not, then this only affirms perception about our country. And there's a big difference between perception and reality. So I think they should change the wording by from your perception to from your experience.
Thank you. Let me just respond to that. Chairman Lilia is correct. Most of the time they ask perception, and what we've done in all our discussion, debate, and arguing with IFC is that we have focused on the experience, and we have focused on the actual law and regulation governing these particular processes. So we've fought hard, as Lilia knows, and the rest of the team, and public and private sector. I know Secretary Purisimo has been out there to talk to them. I've been out there to talk to them. I'll be back in October to meet with IFC on this just before they release the report. So we are getting away from perception. We want to get down to reality. In many cases, I think reality has, perception has not caught up to the reality.
Lilia, could I invite you to come here? Because we're going to open it up to the floor. And Pezza has been doing such a great job, and I'm sure people want to ask you some questions as well, and you might have some information you want to share with the broader audience. So if I may, can I just ask you to come and sit here?
Yes, I'll just make another point.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, the other point is in the ease of doing business. I'd just like to share with the group here, especially the foreign investors or those who are intending to invest in the Philippines, that in PESA we have put up 4 pillars of our service orientation. First, in PESA, we are a one-stop shop. Second, we're not just a one-stop shop, we are a non-stop shop. When we say non-stop shop, that includes Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, Christmas, New Year, except Good Friday. We don't work on Good Friday. Then, in PESA, there's no red tape. I assure you, gentlemen, we have only red carpet treatment to our investors. And fourthly, and most importantly, in PESA, there's no graft and no corruption. If there is, just let us know, and click, out they go. So, also, we are ISO 9001-2008 certified for all processes at all levels in all our offices nationwide to ensure that our quality management system is uniform all over. And lastly, I think I am very proud of that, of our after-sales service, which I think no one can beat. Thank you very much.
It's true. Lilia, please join us here as we open the floor up to questions. Just some ground rules for the Q&A. Before you ask your question, please state your name and your affiliation. Try to keep it down to 1 question each because we may have a lot of questions. I will be a little flexible if I note that we have some time left over. But in the meantime, 1 question each per person, and I will entertain you if you go to the mic.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in the case of, this is not a question, but this is actually the point of view from the local government units. Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Actually, I'm representing the League of Municipalities of the Philippines, the 1,491 municipalities all over the country. So actually, our perception, the macroeconomic view is rarely seen clearly from the ground. Our concerns may be strategic for our local government units, but are generally day-to-day compared to concerns of our national government and the business sector on matters such as foreign direct investments. Now, we were informed that our country lags behind our other Southeast Asian neighbors when it comes to attracting foreign direct investments. If we had as much foreign direct investments as Indonesia of $19.85 million, or Singapore with a whopping $56.65 million, how would this affect the lives of people in the municipalities? We in the municipalities are in the position to make some necessary changes to make our country more attractive to foreign direct investment. Somehow, what we know is that we are not as business-friendly as other nations based on the recent survey pointing to difficulties in doing business, registration, and other things. This is where LGUs can contribute. First, we can lower the risk of doing business, which may be more attractive to investors. Environmental risks and vulnerabilities of foreign investments, once lowered, may attract a portion of foreign direct investments. A show of political stability through political unity and maturity lessens the fear for foreign direct investments, making drastic decisions. What they need are controllable and predictable climates for business. In the case of local government units' efficiency in doing business, like in the case of the League of Municipalities of the Philippines, we implemented the e-governance for municipal development. Some 100 or so local government units have improved information technology and applied this to better business registration systems, licensing, and efficiency in transacting for business processes. This is actually in partnership with the National Computer Center and of course, other local government units, those who belong to the first-class municipalities, to the highly urbanized cities, they subcontracted a private firm to automate their processing system. What we are trying to do now is to encourage our member municipalities or other local government units to streamline and automate their business permit and licensing system. We from the local government units, we try to identify some champions local government units to showcase their innovations and initiatives concerning the automation of their business permit and licensing system, the real property taxes also. And we also see some light in improving energy efficiency as a factor for attracting investors. In LGUs, there are a lot of ways to tap into renewable energy like hydroelectric, geothermal, windmills. So just to cite an example of our local government units who shown success in their in the automation of their business permit licensing systems in the municipalities like the Carmona, Cavite, San Mateo, Isabela, Tagudin, Ilocos Sur, Lawang, Northern Samar, Ipil, Zamboanga, Sibugay, Bacoor, Cavite, Dadaet, Camarines Norte. Actually, we are very happy to the National Competitive Council, Mr. Cruz. We are really actually partnering with them to support especially those who belong to the rural areas. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you, ma'am. Your name again, ma'am?
I'm Lian De Leon. I'm the Executive Director of the League of Municipalities of the Philippines.
Okay, because I think there will be some questions also. May I invite you to take that one last chair? We've got a few more minutes and I do want to get a lot of questions in. So please, there might be some LG-related concerns. So can you go up there? Kim, did you want to say something?
Yeah, first, before I make this statement, I'd like to just clarify that I'm not against foreign direct investment, okay? But it seems like, as far as we're concerned, the country needs investment, whether it be domestic or foreign. Because it seems like all the discussion is just foreign direct investment. As far as I believe the policymaker is concerned, as long as there's investment and it creates job, then that's it, whether it's domestic or foreign. It should be neutral. We should encourage domestic investment as well, not only foreign direct investment. Because I think the domestic investors, the one that who had a real stake in the country, because they're here, they cannot get out of here, while foreign investment can always pack up and go. So I think that should be, because in all the forum, it's always foreign direct investment and nothing discussed about domestic investment. All investment, foreign or domestic, is what the government encourages. The second thing is, because I was part of the World Bank IFC doing business survey, and I was in the initial stages. All the problem with our rating in doing business is the problem that the investor faces is that when they try to set up a branch or a business in one municipality or in another city, they are faced with different kind of registration. And it's nice that all of them are computerizing, but if you look at the computerization, it's localized. It's not integrated. It's not like you go into a website and you just click, I want to register in. You choose, you have 1,000 plus municipality and city, you just choose, and when you apply, it goes in, and all the requirements are the same. The difficulty in the Philippines is that each locality will have different requirements. So I think that's the next stage of reform. It's not enough that each city and municipality have their own system or their own IT system. It just institutionalized the difficulty, that IT system. The IT system should really be integrated, like what the national government is trying to do now, which is integrating all the IT system in the national government so that we don't have we don't have redundancy, we don't waste the same resources, and data will be automatically integrated and all of them will be linked together so that you have a good picture of what is really happening in the economy and what's going on, and so that you can do specific intervention, not general intervention. So I guess that's the challenge for the Philippines. It's because we gave so much independence to the local government. It's how to integrate them without lessening their independence. It's how to make them, enable them, and at the same time maintain their independence, but make it easy for everyone to just deal with one portal so that they can have they don't have to learn for each municipality. This is the requirement.
Okay, Lito, you have a comment, and then we have someone there asking a question, and then we've got a couple of people there. So Lito first, and then the gentleman in blue, and then the lady over there.
I thought I'd just call it out and shift gears a little bit, because it has been mentioned by practically all the speakers about the IT investments that need to be made in government. And I think that this is a very important point. And I'm not talking about Accenture here trying to get work from the government for IT, but I think that the industry itself, particularly the Philippine Software Industry Association, would be in a good position to actually cooperate and collaborate with the government in terms of putting up and making sure that we implement a lot of these IT systems that we're talking about, which I think in the end are also just as important in the overall regulatory environment and stability that we're all talking about.
All right. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. This person was the first to ask to stand up, so I will give you the floor first. And then the gentleman in blue.
My name is Sister Mary Rebecca Rogacion, IGS, and I am in the women's sector of NAPC, National Anti-Poverty Commission.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. It's so nice to be here and to listen to all these projections. And when I listen to it, the future is bright and rosy. But when I meet with the people from the 14 sectors of the National Anti-Poverty Commission, the future is very bleak. There's still so much talk of corruption. and the rosy future or the rosy statistics that we have has not trickled down to the poor. So I wonder if you have any projection on how long it will take for all this inclusive growth to reach the poor.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your question. Let me just say before we...
Add one more thing.
One question per, ma'am, because there are a number of people. But let me at least try to begin to address your question. Then maybe I can throw it to Secretary Abad. One of the things that we've done is this government has invested in social services to the extent that no other government has. I think that's pretty clear on the ground. We also see that the poverty numbers seem to be lagging behind the growth numbers. Poverty and employment figures are something that NEDA keeps a very close watch on. Because they are lagging. And while that's natural, we really do feel that we need to do more things to keep those numbers, to bring those numbers down. We have an ambitious target of bringing the poverty numbers down over the next 3 years. And to be honest, it remains to be seen whether we are actually going to meet those targets. But certainly the kind of resources we're dedicating to the anti-poverty programs will show you that we're very serious about doing this. And we share your hope that these numbers can go down even more quickly. Butch, do you want to add something to that?
Yes, thank you, Ricky. Good morning to everyone. You know, the first thing that this government did, which is unprecedented, is to determine and find out who are the poor people in this country and where they may be found. And we have that now through the National Household Targeted Survey. We also are in the process of completing a National Small Farmers Registry. The NEDA has adopted a strategy of pursuing development, not in the general sense, but determining, which towns and regions have high incidence of poverty, or which cities, towns, and regions may not have high incidence of poverty, but the magnitude of poor people living in these areas are huge. And having determined that, we have developed programs that target the poor. For example, the conditional cash transfer program started out when we came in 2010 with about 800,000 indigent household beneficiaries with a budget of 10 billion pesos. Today, we are targeting 3.9 million indigent households with a budget of about 44 billion pesos. This is a direct cash subsidy program that aims at two things: getting kids back into school and making sure that the kids and their mothers go for a health checkup. And these are the two conditions that qualify people for the conditional cash transfer program. And apart from that, every month, the families come together to do workshops for financial inclusion or healthcare delivery. The second thing we've done is to make sure that the children are sufficiently educated and healthy. By the end of this year, for the first time in our history, we would have closed the resource gaps in basic education. And I refer to classrooms, teachers, textbooks. By the end of this year, we would have built all the rural health units that the country needs because of huge increase in the budget for public health under the Department of Health. Because of the sin tax reform law that was passed last year, the budget of the Department of Health has increased by 45%. Will be increasing by 45% next year. We are also making sure that over 106,000 families living in waterways in the Metro Manila area will be resettled either new site in city or in resettlement areas. And the government has also put together an unprecedented budget to make this happen. On top of that, we are pursuing programs that can bring immediate employment to our people. That's why we have increased our infrastructure budget for next year by 1% and hoping to increase it by 1% every year, so that from 275 billion this year,
the infrastructure budget will go up to about 638 billion by the time the President leaves office in 2016. And together with that, we are pursuing programs that can in fact impact directly on the poor, who are mostly in the rural areas. That's why we are pushing huge investments in agricultural modernization and fisheries, as well as in tourism. By next year, we have to be able to bring in 6.8 million tourists, but even more important than that, generate about 47 million tourists in the country. So, Ricky, there are very short-term efforts at addressing the poor, and I think it's deceptive merely to look at just the poverty numbers, because you have to ask yourself how much less poor are the poor now, because getting them out of poverty requires huge investments, and we are making that. But eventually, as all of these programs kick in, both the social services program as well as the job generation program, I think you will be seeing a significant dent on the poverty problem in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Butch. Gentleman in the blue shirt, thank you for patiently waiting.
Ricky, can
Hold
I
on,
say?
Kim. Yeah, sorry, we'll get back to you. But we're getting a longer line, so I want to accommodate as many people as possible. Sir.
Good morning. I'm Robert Pareja from Meralco, and I would like to ask a question to Secretary Greg Domingo regarding his statement saying that not only foreign direct investments has grown, but also our domestic investments. And I have to agree with our BIR Commissioner that domestic business is very vital to the growth of the country. I would like to ask, what are the local industries, local domestic industries that have grown for, at least for the past year? And where are these industries located? What location? We all know that the Philippines is an archipelago, and it is a logistics nightmare. But what locations have really grown? Is it still Luzon? Is it still Greater Metro Manila? Or are we seeing rapid growth in the Visayas and the Mindanao areas? So, sir.
Thank you, sir. Where is the growth in domestic investments coming from, geographically and industry?
Actually, that's, I don't have the detail of that, but that would have been a NEDA question type. I have to get back on that. I don't have the numbers with me in terms of the breakdown by region.
If you could give us your contact details, and I'll make sure that someone from NEDA gives you those numbers. Unfortunately, Secretary Balisacan is at a budget hearing, so he's unable to attend. The lady in green?
Yes. Good morning. I'm Eileen Clemente. I'm wearing different hats, but for today, I'll ask my question as the Deputy President of the ASEAN-TA, which is the ASEAN Tourism Association. In 2010, that was the signing of the ASEAN integration, which is for effect for 2015. And about the same time, that was the Tourism Act that was passed into law. And in that is the TIEZA, which is similar to the PEZA for tourism industries. And until now, the agreement between BIR and the DOT is still, I think, being held back. So may I know the specific reason for this? Because our acid test actually is 2015, and we are the first country to host the ASEAN Tourism Forum after the ASEAN integration. While there are already some investments, we really need to move fast, and having 2 years away from 2015 is very vital for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, do you want to take that? Mon Jimenez is also here in the house, so if he wants to respond to that as well, he can. But Kim, you go first.
First, about the poverty.
Kim, yeah, okay.
No, because this is what I learned from my Secretary of Finance, no, that China has been growing for 30 years, but there's still poverty. India has been growing for how many years? The poverty is still very much a problem. No? So we're just starting 3 years.
Yeah.
So comparing to the 30 years, right? So we have to be patient. No? And I think one of the problem with the Philippines is we are such an impatient people, no? When we see that we're improving, we say we're improving so we can relax. Then we started slacking. Then that's why we never really are able to sustain the growth and be able to address poverty. So the challenge is really keeping our eyes on the ball, and continuing with it and working hard. No? With regard to TIESA, we have adopted a policy that we will work for the repeal of the tax exemption in the TIESA law. That's why we're not entering into any agreement with the Department of Tourism. So that's the reason why there is no agreement with the Department of Tourism.
Okay. Mon, did you want to say something?
Well, I would only add that there is in fact an agreement in the economic cluster to put full support behind a incentives rationalization law, and in fact have it certified as urgent. So you can consider that a kind of one step backward to move two steps forward. So just to reassure Eileen in the ASEAN, there is a tremendous amount of urgency behind this, and we are in fact working together so that we can move forward as quickly as possible. But if you might imagine, there has to be some rationalization done before we can actually move forward. These are not things we can make mistakes on, even given the 2015 deadline. We will make it. We're confident we'll make it.
Okay, thank you, Mon. Gentleman in the jacket over there.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Romeo Redas from Magsaysay Group. Well, my question is again about poverty. I hope you won't get tired of answering about that. In particular, it's about the squatters' problem. I know that we all know that the government has a program for resettling all these squatters. Does the government take into consideration the economic component in this resettling these squatters? Meaning to say, do they take into consideration providing a sustainable means of livelihood for these squatters so that they won't come back to the cities? Like, for instance, giving incentives to investors in putting up their businesses in the nearby areas, or putting up cottage industries or cooperatives that will help these people alleviate their life.
Yeah, actually that is one of the big problems with resettlement. If you don't if they don't have a livelihood where you've moved them, then they tend to come back. A couple of things we're doing, I don't want to take too much time because there are some questions. We're doing as much in-city resettlement as we can, and we've allocated a large budget for people to be moving within the city and away from the danger zones. In areas where they're forced to go out, we try to locate the resettlement areas in places where, number one, there's significant economic activity as much as possible, and number two, where there are, as much as possible, again, transportation routes to make it relatively easy to go to your place. Certainly that is the biggest problem with resettlement, is making sure that they stay there. And we're attending to that. It's not always perfect, but we are aware of the problem, and we are addressing it generally through those means that I described. We can get you something more specific if you're interested. I can get your contact details, and we'll have something sent to you that provides you more detail about what I'm talking about. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, over here.
Thanks, Secretary Carlang. I'm Oli Alcala from Dow Chemical Group. First, I would like to congratulate the government because in the past 2 quarters, the growth in industry has outpaced in terms of percentage versus services, and that's a very good stride in terms of industry growth. Now, for the question, I would like to address it to Secretary Greg Domingo. From investment perspective, what's the industry roadmap for manufacturing industry that the government is undertaking to sustain gains in manufacturing industry? And how does government link it or integrate it to other roadmaps and projects, as well as also in the case of local government units.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, actually, we have been undertaking a roadmap building process over the past year and a half, led by Undersecretary Che Cristobal, and this is really the manufacturing roadmap. And we've done it not like in one blow, but per sector. So in fact, we've already released a couple of them, the chemical industry roadmap and the copper industry roadmap, and we are working on about 20 of them. Soon we hope to release the auto industry roadmap, and then we will be, as they're ready, we will bring them out in succession. Now these roadmaps were not made by the government. We asked actually the private sector to come up with the roadmaps because the government recognizes that the best experts are the ones involved in the industry itself, not the government. Our role is really to look at the roadmaps and see what interventions the government can provide to include in the roadmap to make it really joint production in terms of government and private. At the end, when we have all these over 20 roadmaps in place, we have asked actually a private group to look at it and try to help us consolidate to come up with integrated manufacturing roadmap. So that's in the works right now. The individual roadmaps, which we'll release some, and then we'll continue to release some over the next 6 months, and then put out an integrated roadmap sometime next year.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, sir, for your question. This is going to be the end of our first panel discussion. I acknowledge that there are some questions that have come in writing. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I will give priority at the next session to people who actually go up to the mic, and if we do have time, then I will go to the questions that are written down. But if you want to get your question asked, the best way to do it is to go up to the mic. That concludes our first panel discussion. I'd like to thank our panel members for joining us and for the lively back and forth. Thank you. We're going to go straight to our second panel discussion, and that's going to be about infrastructure. Just like in the first panel discussion, we're going to begin with a short presentation to kick off the talks. Let's roll that.
The Philippines transformation continues. Government mindful of improving infrastructure is key to greater competitiveness, seeking deeper collaboration among stakeholders to move products and people more easily, accelerate growth, effectively provide social services, and attract more investments.
There are two things that have really been constraining our capacity to attract foreign direct investments and even investments by our local entrepreneurs. One is the quality of our infrastructure, and we have been investing substantially in infrastructure development to reduce the cost of doing business in this country and to make our production bases more efficient and able to compete globally.
The past several years has been quite dramatic in the sense that things are moving quite fast, at least in the area of roads and bridges. What has been happening right now is good because it has placed us on the world arena. So people now see what's going on. No longer are they see that we are backward. That if the investments do come into the country, both from our own people and from outside, then there will be more work for the construction industry.
No revenue and expenditure reforms in creating more fiscal space and enabling government to ramp up infrastructure spending.
On the fiscal policy side, more efficient public spending, more aggressive mobilization of revenues has allowed the government to channel greater investments in infrastructure. Investment grade ratings and improved competitiveness should help draw in long-term investors in the country's infrastructure sector, for example, in the manufacturing sector, tourism sector, in agribusiness sector.
Our investments in infrastructure development will go from about 2.5% of GDP this year to a max of about 5% of GDP in 2016. That's about 860 billion pesos more in infrastructure projects that will go to national roads and bridges, irrigation, school buildings, health facilities, post-harvest systems of the agricultural sector. We want to low-hanging fruit to continue to expand, and this is tourism. We are investing hugely in infrastructure that will make about 10 tourist zones accessible to visitors, domestic and foreign alike.
The government's infrastructure program, developed systematically and collaboratively, will be a catalyst to spur more private sector investment and help pave the way for sustained growth.
We've taken on convergence programs with other agencies. In particular, we have this tourism road infrastructure program where we will spend a little over 50 billion. The whole objective is, whether it's national road or local road, we want to upgrade the quality so that tourists can reach our priority destinations under tourism master plan with convenience. Aside from that, we will start building up investments in flood management, mitigating the effects of climate change as well as the recent events of flooding in urban centers in particular. So you will see a ramping up of probably close to 50 billion pesos a year just on flood mitigating measures. We're just finalizing the guidelines so that foreign contractors can start participating in the industry for projects above 1 billion pesos. So we will continue to make sure that we will have transparent bidding, we will continue to pursue and really make the market work. I think our local contractors in the past 2 years have been asked to upgrade their equipment so we can become competitive. We are continuing to cluster projects so that projects become bigger, become more attractive for local as well as foreign contractors. I think with this upgrading, we hope that, and we're seeing more interested investors now in to look at flood management, to look at roads, to look at bridge technology, and other aspects of the construction industry.
The road is literally being paved to welcome investors and visitors alike.
The PPP program was identified by this administration as a means to address our infrastructure gap. There's close coordination right now with the various implementing agencies to have a faster implementation or rollout period for our projects. Moving forward, we're looking at amending the BOP, Build, Operate, Transfer Law to institutionalize the reforms that we've started. The Department of Finance is going to set up a contingent liability fund, and that should send a clear signal to the investors that we are committed to honoring the sanctity of our contracts. DPWH is also leading the amendment on the right-of-way acquisition so that the implementation of these two projects would be faster.
We have quite a number of measures that we've actually done. We have an investment promotion who will make sure we'll babysit them from A to Z in securing their values, permits, and requirements in order for them to come up with their own infrastructures. On power, which is actually quite essential, what we're arming ourselves with is actually demand forecasting. There is a reason for investors to come in when they actually see that there is a demand. For every demand is an opportunity, and for every opportunity comes investment.
Been a significant development in the first half of this year.
was that foreign tourist arrivals hit a new high of about 2.4 million arrivals by June, which is very significant when you consider that is over 11% in growth versus a year ago. The implication of that is that we are well on our way to reaching the 5 million visitor mark by the end of 2013. Something which we are really looking forward to because it will fuel a lot of excitement for all our other programs and services. There have been very significant investments in the tourism business. There are the new hotels, for example, that have opened up both in the National Capital Region and very significant resort and hotel developments in the Visayas and Mindanao. We're talking here not just about hotels, of which we expect to add about 12,000 rooms by the middle of next year, but also convention facilities, which are also coming on stream. Those investments are only about 2 years old, and they are multiplying as we speak. Tourism thrives, tourism investment specifically thrives in an atmosphere of confidence. We're very happy, in fact, that the investment grade ratings are now seen as boosters for people to feel reassured that it's not only more fun to visit the Philippines, but it's also more profitable.
Observers, including the country's development partners, agree that the Philippines is on the right track.
It must increase investment in infrastructure, and it must increase investment in human capital. And this is precisely what the government has been doing.
Investment Grade Philippines, facilitating infrastructure development, seizing opportunities to achieve inclusive growth.
Thank you. Let's call our panel to the stage. PPP Center Executive Director Cosette Canilao, Nestle Philippines President and CEO John Martin Biller, Tourism Secretary Ramon Jimenez, Ayala Corporation Chairman Jaime Augusto Isabel de Ayala, Public Works Secretary Rogelio Singson, Macquarie Infrastructure and Real Assets Managing Director Michael Rodriguez, Transportation and Communications Secretary Joseph Emilio Abaya, and Energy Secretary Carlos Jericho Petilla. And just like with the previous discussion, our panelists have a lifeline in the other members of the cabinet and other officials who are sitting here also with us. I'd like to begin the discussion by asking for a short statement from the Secretaries of Public Works and Transportation and Communications. Let's begin with Secretary Singson.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. Good morning to everyone. What do you expect from DPWH moving forward, and what have we done so far? Since 2010 or 2011, where we really had a full, practically start of our budget year, our investment in capital outlay or hard projects, I think you now are familiar with what hard project and soft projects are all about. No? So we invested in 2011 90 billion. And in 2014, we will be already at 184 billion pesos. So that's more than double in 2014. And as Secretary Abad mentioned, we intend to increase investment in infrastructure to about 5% of GDP. This means that assuming things go well and looking at the
current proportion of investments going to DPWH, our budget for capital outlay will be over 300 billion pesos. No? So that will be almost 3 times when we started in 2011. Now, where do you expect these investments to be going into? First, we have committed to improve the quality and safety of our national roads and bridges, which number about 31,000 kilometers nationwide. So that's the first area. The second area is we are continuing to invest heavily to support our tourism master plan. Between Secretary Jimenez and myself, they have already identified their priority tourism destinations, and we're looking at about 56 billion investment to support tourism. This will amount to about over 2,000 kilometers of roads leading to our designated tourism destinations. The third area would be we will start ramping up investments to address logistics problem as far as food production and food processing centers are concerned. Starting next year, we will improve what we refer to as farm-to-market roads, but this time an honest-to-goodness farm-to-market network that will connect farms, production centers, food processing centers to our national road network. Another area where you expect heavy investments, as I mentioned in the video, is that we will start ramping up investments to mitigate floods in urban centers. And in particular, we're now finishing our master plan for the 18 major rivers that will cover about over 50 provinces and cities. Now, as far as Metro Manila is concerned, we will expect to start the actual construction of what we have referred to as the Metro Skyway Network, so that if you're coming north to south, you don't need to go through EDSA, but go through the Skyway. So we hope to start the actual construction by next year for the 3-legged Skyway network that we're developing for Metro Manila.
Thank you. June, would you like to say something first?
Well, just to give an update on the projects of DOTC, we have the 3 foremost PPP projects that we have are the bid for the Mactan Cebu International Airport. We have finalized the concession agreement. We are awaiting the final decision on when the submissions will be. We expect the submissions to be sometime next month. Likewise, for the automatic fare collection system, the bid should be by next month. And likewise, the LRT1 PPP project, we've stumbled a little, but we do expect that they should be bidded out first quarter of next year, January or February. For the other airport projects that we have, Panglao Bohol Airport is currently ongoing, likewise with Daraga. Of course, our very own NAIA Terminal 1 has to be rehabilitated. Our colleagues here have set a very firm deadline that the rehab of Terminal 1 should be completed by November of next year, just in time for the hosting of APEC ministerial meetings. Likewise, we've signed with Takinaka the completion of Terminal 3. We expect that to be done. We'll have a full Terminal 3 available to our people by June of next year. Likewise, for our rail system, particularly our very showcase along EDSA, MRT3, we are now post-qualifying the lowest complying bid. However, as I've explained, LRVs or the coaches themselves are not like tricycles that we, just because you have the cash, you could take it on the next day. It will take a year and a half to produce the prototype, and full delivery would come first quarter of 2016. Likewise, MRT7, this would be the rail system that would serve northeastern Metro Manila. It's scheduled for NEDA board approval. After getting NEDA board approval, we will issue the notice to proceed, and then such construction will happen. Of course, a big issue here is how to fast-track the PPPs. I expect questions later. But in all honesty, the short time that I've been with DOTC, PPP is a very sophisticated negotiation process between government and private sector. We are not backing down on this. The continuing balancing act between private sector viability in terms of participation is always balanced out by our responsibility to always look after public service and public interest. And that is not a complementing issues that hold each other's hand throughout. They could be very conflicting at times, thus it is the responsibility of government to push this out as quickly as possible without compromising public interest and public service.
Thank you, June. I'm sure we'll have a lot of lively discussion about the issues that you raised as we move forward. I want to ask, first of all, John and Jaime and Michael, from the private sector's point of view, I mean, you've seen what we're doing and what we're trying to do. Has it had any impact on your businesses? And what would you like to see happen moving forward? Jaime?
Ricky, I think the answer is absolutely yes. It's had an impact, and I'd say a very positive one. I think the monetary and fiscal environment that the government has provided leadership on has given us an economic environment in the country at this point in time that is substantially better than most other countries in the region. That framework for us to work from a business perspective is an extraordinary one. Interest rates are at their lowest level in a long time. That's allowed private sector institutions to raise capital, to use their balance sheets, and to be much more productive, I guess, in the investment environment than ever before. And so let me just start with that. This is a wonderful framework within which to work in a country. I'm also supportive of some of the comments that have been made. Commissioner Henares made them, Greg Domingo, Secretary Greg Domingo, that we're really talking about capital formation, be it local or foreign. That is what's necessary. So I guess a bottom line, the kind of environment that we have right now is conducive to that capital formation. And in the end, I think the government has a renewed capacity in its own balance sheet, and so do the private sector companies, to do extraordinary things. I guess the only point that I want to make is that all of us, both government and private sector, have to be a lot bolder now. I sometimes get the feeling that we still consider ourselves a poor country. I don't think so. I think we're a wealthy country with tremendous opportunity, and it needs a mental attitude that is more aggressive, that is bigger in its way of thinking. Our capacity as a government and our capacity as private sector has never been higher. So it's really now a matter of growing, executing, and really looking in a far bigger scale. And that's a challenge, I think, that we face as private sector and the government faces. That having been said, I have to commend many of the secretaries here. Secretary Singson in particular has been growing his portfolio at 30 to 40%, every quarter. Those are extraordinary numbers in the public works side. But there's still many challenges, and with an economy that's growing, come many interesting new things. An economy that's growing, create bottlenecks, create new opportunities, and it's a matter of tackling them and bringing both capital from the private sector and public sector to address them. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaime. John, you want to chime in?
Yes, certainly. I would really like to echo what Jaime was just saying. I think this is a wonderful time, a uniquely wonderful time to be doing business in the Philippines. I have the privilege of leading a business which in fact has been doing business in the Philippines for 102 years, but I think there has been no better time. I'd like to reflect on just a couple of points. We've touched on inclusive growth, and I think it's absolutely right and appropriate that we do this. I think that government and business has a unique responsibility. The government talks about inclusive growth. In my own company, we talk about creating shared value, and I believe very strongly any business, be it an international business or a domestic business, it's essential that that business generates wealth, not gives back. I think that would be the wrong expression, but mutually grows and contributes to the wealth of the community in which we operate. And that's something which is profoundly important to our business. I think we can only be sustainable and successful in a long-term sense if we are aiding the overall economy and the communities in which we operate also to sponsor. I'd also like to just reflect on infrastructure, the main thrust of our subject. And here again, I would like to pay tribute to all of the work that has been achieved by the administration. Specifically, when you're running an operation such as our own, we move around 450,000 tons of products every year. And as has already been mentioned, we live in a complex island nation. Moving that volume around in this environment is quite a challenge. So I think the innovation of the Ro-Ro ports is something that we greatly welcome, and particularly the continued commitment to raising the quality and the extent of this kind of infrastructure. Likewise, ports, and we manufacture the vast majority of our products here in the Philippines. We have 6 manufacturing units. We do, however, have to import a large amount of our raw materials, and therefore Batangas Port begins to feature very, very seriously in our equation, and we would really like to see more done to encourage other players to actually use that very fine facility, where incidentally I think the road network really is a model, and that indeed would also take pressure off the North Port here in Manila. Road network's extremely important. Every day we're moving around 340,000 cases of products. So again, the SETEX is an extremely important facility from our point of view. And then if I can just talk finally a little bit about IT technology, which of course is becoming so much an underpinning facilitator of business today. One of the things that we greatly welcome is the one window approach to the processing of applications, and it's great to see, the Customs Authority, the FDA, now putting everything online, so we no longer have to go to 10 individual different departments. Actually, this can all be done in real time on a screen. So I think there have been considerable improvements, and again, I would really like to endorse and applaud the commitment to raise the investment from 2.2% to 5% of the total budget by 2016. This can only augur well for the fortunes of business and, more importantly, for the fortunes of the nation.
Michael?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm here representing Macquarie Infrastructure and Real Assets, which is the world's largest manager of infrastructure investment funds. But more importantly, I'm also here representing the Philippine Investment Alliance for Infrastructure, which is in itself a public-private partnership initiative to invest in Philippine infrastructure. Apart from the facilities and the services that are created by the extra investment in infrastructure, it's important to note that this government is also laying the groundwork for the creation of a viable investment class for the net savings that the country will be growing over the coming years. You have your pension funds, for example, the insurance companies as well, that are always looking for long-term assets that are well-structured and have long-term stable or predictable yields. Now, this is what most people don't realize, is that as the country grows, of course, the pension funds, the savings of the nation will also increase. And unless we develop the infrastructure as a viable asset class, then a lot of that money will either have to go to the short-term markets where you have a lot of fluctuations and volatility, or, God forbid, go overseas. So it's better for us to invest in our own country because we obviously understand the situation here. And what the government's doing right now is really empowering that sector. And we're, of course, representing the investment community, particularly those involved in infrastructure investment, which is a special class in itself. We are really heartened by the fact that the government is committed to reforming all industry sectors. And at the same time, a common theme we've heard all morning is institutionalizing the reforms. So we hope that this will continue way beyond this administration, because a lot of things are at stake here, not just the roads you use or the planes you fly, but even your own savings and your future sources of wealth. Thank you.
Thanks. Cosette, we were talking earlier about how the macro numbers are lining up and it all looks good. And then we're also saying that we want to focus a lot of the resources on infrastructure. What are we doing to make it easier for investors to come in and bid and participate in infrastructure projects?
Well, for infrastructures which will be sourced through public-private partnerships, we made sure, this administration made sure that there's enough support to enable the government or implementing agencies to come up with projects that will be viable for the private sector. So we set up the project development and monitoring facility, which enables the agencies to source or hire consultants and transaction advisors. DBM also put up a strategic support fund embedded in the agency's budgets to fund the government equities in these types of projects. So those are the initial mechanism that were set up by government. As I mentioned in the AVP earlier, DRF is also setting up a contingent liability fund, which sends a really good signal to investors that we would like to address the regulatory issues of these contracts that we're going to set up.
One of the things that I think concerns people is the number of agencies involved in getting something done. I remember when Babe Singson was appointed water czar, he realized that there were so many agencies that had something to do with water resources and distribution. It got a little complicated. Babes, can you talk a little bit about how complicated that is and how we're working to make it more simple?
Well, with the pronounced desire to improve the coverage of water supply and sanitation services, as well as to optimize water resources in the country, the President asked us, and together with NEDA, to look at what is happening in the water sector and how come we have not reached our Millennium Development Goals as far as services is concerned. So, to our surprise, there are some over 30 agencies involved in the water sector doing bits and pieces. No? So that's what we're trying to work out with NEDA so that we have a coherent program for water supply and sanitation services. Because right now, for example, you could, if you go to the LGUs, you might have a water district operated by LUA, you might have a water district operated by the local government unit, you might also have an independent cooperative serving the community, and so they have their own rules, they have their own, there's no regulatory framework, and then to top this all, you have a problem of water supply, the bulk supply. Small water districts obviously cannot fund a huge investment in bulk supply, so they end up using groundwater or deep well, and we know that once you go into deep wells, sooner or later that's going to run dry, and so the sustainability is under question. So it's this whole area of putting some order in the water sector that the President is so concerned about, so that we have sustainable supply and we have a sustainable business model for the water sector.
Is it easier to reconcile all these things when someone is explicitly designated as the guy in charge?
That's what we are working out with Congress, actually, in terms of trying to put some order in the water services sector.
One of the other infrastructure-related issues that often comes up, and you see this also in the media, is the power rates. They say that we have some of the highest power rates in the region. Ilkot, maybe you can talk a little bit about the power situation and what are we doing at this point?
Thank you,
Ricky. You know, when it comes to power and fuel prices, they always look at the Department of Energy. It's a very exciting portfolio. And by the way, I think this week we will have a rollback in fuel prices. All I can say is it has nothing to do with me. So that if it does increase, it's the same message. It has really nothing to do with me. But let me get down to power, because it's everybody complains about high electricity costs, but when you ask them, they don't know what the cost is per kilowatt hour. And the first thing to do is actually trying to analyze the power rates in this country is really to understand them. And before I came in, we really did not have a Bible from which we can actually see the different power rates and the components that goes with electricity. We now have the Corriente.org.ph, it's www.corriente.org.ph, where we've actually put in place everything that you need to know about power rates. And I didn't even know that the most expensive power in this country is in one of the provinces, and it's about 13 pesos. And the cheapest is actually in Mindanao at roughly around 5 pesos and 90 centavos per kilowatt hour. So it actually varies. But the cost of electricity can actually still go down by tightening the various contracts that utility companies have. And in so doing, they have to be armed with what data is available right now. Like, for example, in that particular website, I actually tried to sort the various information that's there, because it includes the power rates unbundled, it includes generation charges, transmission, distribution charges. It also includes information about the contracting capacity of each plant. And at one point, I actually tried to see what is the most expensive coal plant, generating coal plant in this country, and what is the cheapest. You know, I was actually afraid that what I was going to end up with was the most expensive power plant was also the cheapest in terms of contracting. So I was very careful, but when I actually looked it up, I was happy that it wasn't the case. In fact, the most expensive was actually in Panay at 688 per kilowatt hour, and the cheapest is GM Power, which is under 4 pesos. So if you look at the difference, why it's actually more expensive, we're looking at old plants. 688 is like a 15-year-old plant, but the newer plants that are coming in are actually, these are coal plants, it's actually less than 4 pesos. So as we go along with technology, we can see that there are ways of actually lowering generation costs in this country. It's just that we can't break away from 20-year contracts, for example, that was signed 10 years ago, 12 years ago. We have to wait for those contracts to actually be consummated. But other than that, one of the reasons also that we cannot compete, for example, with Indonesia, and interestingly, about 2 weeks ago, the counterparts of the other ASEAN countries were actually here. We were discussing about power structures, and they were very interested, take note, they were very interested to learn more about electricity in the Philippines. We're one of the most expensive, but they were actually wanting to learn our system. Why? Because our system does not entail subsidy. While in other countries, it's most other countries, they have subsidy. In fact, in Indonesia, I think the subsidy for fuel and electricity is about 700 billion pesos a year, which is something that we cannot afford to do in this country. By actually putting subsidy, we'll be taking away budget from probably DepEd, social welfare. So it's a management factor that's actually involved here. But basically, if we focus on transparency and contract tightening, beyond that, if we actually want to lower our electricity, we'll have to go down to the level of subsidy, which is not actually being considered by this government at this point.
Can I ask our private sector panelists, on one hand, you've got regimes where there's no subsidy or very little subsidy, and people will complain about high power rates. On the other hand, you have other countries where, as ECO says, there are subsidies. And then you've got other people saying, hey, that's not sustainable, there's a better use of government resources. Is there a balance that can be struck, or would you prefer one or the other?
Well, let me just start. I've generally not been a believer in subsidies as an economic model. I think it has a lot of negative externalities that end up affecting the financial system. I think things have to be true to their cost, and then one has to create a competitive environment to bring that cost down as much as possible. It's just a philosophy I have. But maybe to add to that, Ricky, maybe a couple of comments I could make. I applaud the government's desire to bring the private sector in to address what were traditionally public sector projects. I think perhaps, and I took note of Secretary Abaya's comments of this careful balance that government officials have to take between a public sector need and a reasonable rate of return for risk capital gets put to work. I guess I would argue, and I put it on the table as something perhaps we could consider more in the future, is to take into account all the positive externalities that come with the project as well. Sometimes there's a great deal of focus on the specific returns of one project in a specific place. That's fine as a financial discipline. But sometimes I feel we don't take into account enough the positive externalities that come from an infrastructure project in a specific area, be it road-related, be it an airport, be it a port, that affects an economy in the region. And I think that level of sophistication, which is perhaps a bold step that governments have to take, counting on that positive externality taking place, is one that I think as a country we must be a little bolder with. There is a dynamic, a virtual dynamic that comes when projects get undertaken that goes beyond the return of the project itself. And the government's, I guess, in the best position to take into account what that could become. And perhaps I would just encourage maybe more thinking along that line. At the same time, from a private sector point of view, and as I said, Ricky, I'm not a believer in subsidized projects. If a government decides to do it, it obviously has that right, and it has to allocate resources as best it can in any way it can. But when it comes to the private sector, the longevity of these infrastructure projects, the low cash flows up front, the stability we need over 10 to 20-year horizons means that half measures cannot be taken. They must be whole measures, and that involves both a discipline on the implementing side, a discipline on the regulatory side, and a discipline on keeping the frameworks in place that give comfort that that capital you're putting to work over a 20-year time frame can be judged and will have the results it desires, both for the public in general and for the risk capital that get puts to work. No? So those are just my thoughts.
Thanks. Just a few reflections on the cost of electricity. I would make a slightly different point from the industry point of view. Clearly, the cost of electricity is a cost which is factored into our business model. For us, I think the most important thing is the stability and the sustainability. And clearly, this whole notion of infrastructure as being a magnet for growth and for development, I think, is a key issue here. And here I think about our largest factory, which in fact is located in Mindanao, which produces our coffee and our milk. We are still 100% self-reliant for power generation there, and clearly we look forward to the day when we can actually run that factory from the grid. And again, we welcome the plans that the government has to invest and encourage investment in power generation in Mindanao, which I think can be a true engine for development and for growth in that part of the country, which I think has huge potential.
Michael, you want to add to that?
Yes. Well, whilst we're talking about the power sector, and that is a very hot topic, I guess speaking on behalf of my colleagues in the infrastructure and investment community, there still is a clear case for continuing reforms in the power sector. Of course, the Philippines was a darling of the global power sector in the late 90s when we came up with novel ways of creating power supply urgently, but up to this day there still are some inefficiencies in the sector. Power is arguably it's a commoditized product. Power plants are pretty much the same all over the world. You have reference costs, same with fuel and all that. But without going into much detail, because that is a very, very long topic, we still feel that there's room for more reforms. And Secretary Singh mentioned something earlier which is very critical, and that is to really get the government regulator across a lot of infrastructure sectors up and running. We want to see more independent, empowered, and enduring regulators. So in other words, it should not be politicized. The regulator should be a professional person who really specializes in the industry and is there to serve as the, not necessarily the policeman, but an arbiter and the resource to make sure that whatever was agreed today will continue well into the 25-year concession of that project. So yeah, reforms are necessary, but in the case of subsidies versus no subsidies, there clearly are infrastructure areas where subsidies are needed. It's an interplay between demand and supply, but more importantly, demand and the urgency of that demand. So there are, for example, social infrastructure projects that are critical that cannot happen without subsidies. Some people would call it subsidies, and well, let's face it, they are subsidies. But since we are talking about public-private partnerships, you should also look at it as the participation of government, and that's the reason why you have PPPs, right? You don't do PPPs if it's a commercially viable project on a standalone basis. You do it when you do need government support, either through policy initiatives or outright subsidies. So there will be always a case for that option.
Mike, you're saying subsidies, but you're talking about subsidies for specific situations or broad subsidies for certain sectors or
only in specific situations. Okay. I mean, it should always be there, and I guess before a project is presented to the public, I'm sure the implementing agencies have already done their own analysis on whether or not this is, on a standalone basis, viable. And against that, of course, the need to have this particular facility or service.
Can you very briefly respond to some of those points? Number one, the situation requires a continuity and consistency of supply. Number two, a need for improvement in regulation in the power sector.
Right. On the first item, on Mindanao, okay, we do have a problem in Mindanao right now. The good news is, in 2 years' time, we'll have stable power. In fact, in 3 years' time, the biggest worry in Mindanao is actually an oversupply. Right now, the plants are actually coming, they're actually constructing, but they're at the point that they're actually selling their capacity even when it's not needed by the utility company. For some reason, they have a talent of actually selling this. But the bottom line here is if you have an oversupply and a utility company takes it in, it will be passed on to the people. So we're trying to make sure that they're not over-contracting. But at the same time, we're trying to make sure that the investors on the power sector are also not discouraged. We have, the curtailment right now is about 300 megawatts until 2 years from now, 2015. The plants that are coming in online until 2016 and 2017 is about 800 megawatts. It's actually way more than what they need. I'm actually concerned about Mindanao, but on the short-term basis. We're doing a lot of different things. In fact, on Friday, we will be launching the first electricity market. It's an interim electricity market in Mindanao this coming Friday, hoping that we can extract all the small generators to provide electricity to the grid. So that will come into play. There's a lot of resistance, but I feel that this is the best direction towards coming up with short-term electricity needs in Mindanao. Now, sustainability is really an issue when it comes to power. In power, there's always a debate on electricity. Among the industry players, open access, for example, okay, which has been implemented, we actually had huge resistance about implementing that. When the spot market was also implemented 6 years ago, 7 years ago, there was also resistance. There's always resistance in any change. And people are saying that we cannot implement all these measures because we don't have the right environment. And I asked them, what environment are you referring to? Because we don't have an oversupply. In other words, let's wait for all these reforms, okay, before we implement them until we have an oversupply. But I have something to tell everybody. We will never have an oversupply anywhere in the world because oversupply is actually very expensive for investors. If you have extra power and there is no taker, it might actually discourage investors in the future. So supply and demand in power is actually chasing each other. You have the demand and then comes the supply. The problem that we have here is basically demand forecasting. 2 years ago, Department of Energy said, this will be our growth rate. This is the kind of power that we need. That was 2 years ago. So investors came in, they started building power plants, and they used 6% as a growth rate for this country. And that was 2 years ago. It's 7.5 right now. And all of a sudden, we're all panicking because it takes 3 to 4 years to build a plant, a standard plant. Now, if you're actually way off because it's actually higher, then all of a sudden we have to scavenge for extra capacity. We have to advance all the projects that are being done by the private sector. You see, I just recently discovered that the happiness level of the Secretary of Trade and Industry is inversely proportionate to that of the DOE Secretary. When he's happy about the growth rate, we all worry. Okay, and that's why we're trying to actually mitigate the problem. We will have every now and then a disparity between the supply and the demand, and that's not really the fault of the private investors or anybody. It's just that it's difficult to predict growth rate anywhere in the world. Okay, you can only make a projection up to a certain level, but the supply and demand will always chase each other. There will be a little bit of oversupply every now and then. There will be a little bit of shortage every now and then, okay, as we progress towards a growing economy. And that is one thing that we'll have to address. And we're mitigating that right now. We're trying to find ways to actually make sure that the gaps are actually filled up, even on a temporary basis. The private sector mentioned about reforms. I agree. There has to be reforms in the energy sector, for example, because right now I've actually suggested that the Department of Energy should be armed with the capacity to actually own a power plant. And this power plant is like a reserve. That when we have that 6-month shortage, this power plant will come in. It's not in the map. It's not actually counted as a capacity, but it should come in when it's needed, and it should disappear when it's not needed. In fact, people were saying, so what kind of a plant is that? It will have to be the most expensive plant to operate. Why? Because it comes in when it's needed, and when there is enough supply, it will not be able to compete with the private sector. That's the kind of thing that we want, but we're actually constrained from doing that right now. Many other reforms, including reforms probably on monitoring of rates, which is actually set by ERC. And that's also the reason why we put up a website, because we want all the decisions of Department of Energy and ERC, including rates, to be displayed to the people, because we want people to own information on electricity. And that's why we have those websites in place right now for everybody to look at. Mind you, we're getting all sorts of visitors, even visitors from outside of this country. They're actually trying to find out what our rates are and what our current system is at the moment. But I agree with everybody. Reforms on the energy sector, at the same time, sustainability of power more than the rates. Okay, I mean, people complain about electricity rates. When they don't have power, they're willing to pay any amount. When you have power, they complain about the rates. But that's who we are. And we just simply have to accept the fact that that cycle will go on for a long time.
You talked about visitors, which gives me a perfect segue. Juan Jimenez has been spending a lot of time and effort trying to get people to come to the Philippines as tourists. We've broken records for domestic tourism. We are breaking records for international tourism. This is for Lon and the other guys here in the panel. Are we should we be worried that we're getting all these people coming in and our ports, our airports, our roads, and our power is not ready for all of this? If we're really going to do 10 million tourists in the next couple of years, how concerned are you that there may be infrastructure bottlenecks? And to the other guys here, what are we doing about it?
Well, I don't think worry is the right word. I think we are, in fact, alerted to it, and we are, in a certain sense, excited by all the attention. Whenever people follow me up about airports, I tell them, a little jokingly, I'm in charge of congesting airports. Somebody else on this stage is in charge of making them more spacious.
And then he looks at Jim.
But it's very similar to what my friend Ikot is talking about. Tourism is all about a balance of demand and supply. I dare not take my foot off the gas because I'm sure everyone in the room will agree it is what's driving the expansion of infrastructure around airports. I think it's a good time to clarify some statistics to everyone, because I keep hearing this in the news. A certain country has 24 million arrivals. Another country, which is supposed to be behind us, already has 6 million international arrivals. And I tell them, the Philippines is going to break 5 million this year. And they say, isn't that close to last place? And I asked them to look at the map very carefully for them to realize that the Philippines is not part of a contiguous landmass like all the other countries in Southeast Asia. Just to give you a perspective, if we breach the 5 million mark this year, that will be pretty close to the 6.3 million tourists Australia gets every year. That's how countries that are not part of a contiguous landmass behave now. And so that explains why 98% of all our arrivals arrive by air. They don't cross a border by car and have a Coca-Cola across the border and then have their passport marked this afternoon. The implication of that is this: if we reach 10 million by 2016, we would have overtaken not Malaysia, Thailand, we would have overtaken Australia. And the income we will derive out of tourism from that 10 million is about 3 to 4 times what the other countries in the contiguous landmass actually make. Why? Because if you arrive by air, you spend a minimum of 3 to 4 room nights in the Philippines. Our income from a single tourist in the Philippines is actually 3 to 4 times the income that other countries in Southeast Asia make. Why is this all very urgent? Because everyone in this room knows that the tourist has only one suitcase, and the next country is only one mouse click away. So we are engaged in a continuous battle for market share. That is why you are hearing a lot of this talk about congestion and competition. At the last World Travel Mart, even the United States has come out of hiding now, and every single state in the United States has its own marketing communications program. 1 billion people crossed borders last year, and we are fighting to get our fair share of it. Why? Because we are probably one of the last countries in the world to realize that tourism is actually treated as an export business by all other competing countries, because it generates more foreign reserves than most other export businesses.
Thank you, Mon. The floor is now open for questions. So if any of you would like to engage our panelists, feel free to do so. Gentleman over there.
Good morning. I am Alan Jeronimo from Banco de Oro. My question is not on financial matters, but as an ordinary day-to-day commuter.